Life magazine put out in June, I think, of 1966, the plot to get Whitey. All right. And in it is stated that I was head of 1,000 blood brothers across the country that was planning to wage guerrilla warfare.
Of course, the Black Liberation Movement is a priority at that time because the Black Liberation Movement and the quote-unquote Black Rebellion in the country at that time was gaining some significant momentum.
CointelPro was a governmental conspiracy to liquidate the revolutionary leadership of Black America because we were impacting upon the whole country. And the leadership had to be liquidated even up to Dr. King, because Dr. King had changed.
People don't talk about it in those terms right now. We kind of equate and collapse everything into civil rights. But there was a more militant movement, a movement that was reaching out to global politics in terms of anti-imperialism at that particular moment, and it had tremendous potential.
The Black Panther Party was only a small manifestation of what this infrastructure wanted to do. I'm talking about SNCC. Came up with these brilliant ideas, you know, that had nothing to do with a Huey Newton or a Bobby Seale. We were organizing in the South, in the West, in the East, the symbol of the Panther from the Mississippi Freedom and Democratic Party, Fannie Lou Hamer, all these people I knew I'm growing up with and we see.
If you're right, you have to stand on that principle, and if it's necessary to die on the principle, because I am sick of the racist war in Vietnam when we don't have justice in the United States.
The militant aspects it's already there from the deacons on. This is what you did. We grew up in a black nation, a nation that had to protect itself.
We are concerned about the survival of black people in this country, and that we cannot survive if we go fight some yellow man in Vietnam who ain't never called us nigger.
The government saw it as a black Marxist movement growing in the North. We were independent of the Communist Party. We were independent of the Socialist Workers' Party. We were independent of all left groups that they had already infiltrated. It was growing.
But you also had the Chicano movement developing, Asian American, anti-imperialist, national liberation consciousness type movement. In the Puerto Rican community, you had the development of that, as well as with white students and white youth in the formation of SDS and other radical white organizations in that moment. So, you know, in terms of the development of a different type of politics, it scared the hell out of the United States government at that particular moment. And that's why counter-insurgency was developed at that level.
In the past, the poor neighborhoods have been exploited by persons or persons who have been less than American. There's so many of these anti-American, pink, even red organizations.
The FBI and the Department of Justice would learn everything about people in a particular organization. And they did that through wiretaps of telephones, of planting bugs in offices, and using informants.
The Red Squad, there are those units within the police department or any law enforcement unit that have as their function the investigating and looking into organizations that perhaps are a little on the suspect side or have revealed themselves in such a way as to be a little bit questionable.
The FBI broke into our houses, and you would know this because you would come home and you could tell your house had been broken into. Door was locked, nothing was taken except for maybe some papers, but things were rearranged.
The FBI had a way of classifying people who were in the Black Panther Party in many categories, one of which was called the Key Agitator Index. Those were the people who they targeted to be neutralized.
Constitutional rights were not a consideration. They were, in fact, secretly and unilaterally suspended by the FBI with at least the tacit approval of high officials in the federal government for purposes of neutralizing. That's the term that was used within the program itself by those FBI officials who were responsible neutralized the political activities that were considered objectionable on the part of the Bureau undertaken by U.S. citizens.
Gee, I just have one of my informants in another organization go out and shoot this guy and make it look like some kind of a mixed up drug operation and, you know, have him assassinated. That'll neutralize him for sure.
At approximately 2:45 p.m. this afternoon, 2 men were murdered at the UCLA campus.
At UCLA, you had Bunchy Carter, Alprentice Carter, who was basically the head of the Los Angeles chapter of the Black Panther Party, along with another Panther named John Huggins, who was a key organizer down there, killed by federal undercover personnel, basically, in a classroom at the University of California, Los Angeles. This was in Campbell Hall. And, you know, it was just cold. They were eliminated. The FBI took credit for that result in its internal memoranda.
One agent first told me about the agents, the assassination of Carter and Huggins in Los Angeles, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, sure. But I found out later that he wasn't just joking with me, it was true, from looking into the file.
Had to do with a disinformation campaign in order to set two political organizations, both of which had been infiltrated, at odds with one another, creating a context in which instance certain of the infiltrators could eliminate bona fide activists on the other side. You then have the FBI agent in charge, a guy by the name of Richard Wallace Held, who now runs security for the Visa Corporation. Agent Held talked about how successful the operation had been, and on that basis sought approval for it to be continued. The approval was given. You then have 2 more Panthers who were killed in San Diego.
And I said, those aren't the only 2 assassinations. I said, had 2 in Chicago.
Most famously, perhaps, and best documentedly, have the Hampton Clark assassinations. Fred Hampton, deputy chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party.
We didn't talk about a Breakfast with Children program. We've got one. We're not going to tell you how many kids we intend to feed and speed in Chicago. We're feeding 3,000 to 4,000 every week already, and I don't know how many all around the country.
And Mark Clark, who was defense captain for a downstate chapter in Peoria, who was staying in the apartment rented by Mr. Hampton on the 4th of December 1969 when the FBI caused a police arms raid to be executed on the premises, result of which, and this is the cleanest version of it, is that Mr. Hampton and Mr. Clark were shot to death by the police.
And the cops lied about it, and State's Attorney Edward Hanrahan lied about it, and he was clearly in on it. It came out, the family proved it. They did that to decapitate the movement.
We said even before this happened, and we're going to say it after this, and after I'm locked up, and after everybody's locked up, that you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution. Right. You might run a liberator like Harris Cleave out the country, but you can't run liberation out the country. You might murder a freedom fighter like Bobby Hutton, but you can't murder freedom fighting, and if you do, you come up with answers that don't answer, explanations that don't explain, you come up with conclusions that don't conclude. Nothing's more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all.
The government wants